Storytime about my shitty ass ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. My ex and I have been dating for about 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, he was a dick. He would cheat on me, talk to other girls more than me, but of course I pretended that everything was perfect in my relationship. I would brag to all these people about how my relationship was so good, blah blah blah, and everything else. Because it's embarrassing whenever bitches can talk shit because your relationship is very toxic. Like, listen to this bullshit. The whole 2 years we were dating, I had over 10 girls DM me on Instagram saying that they screwed my boyfriend at his house. I never confronted him about it. I was just one of those girls that cared way too much about what everybody else thought. Okay, now fast forward. And it was a Friday at school, and Thanksgiving break was the following day. And him and I have this whole plan to spend the whole break together, because literally a week before that, he was on vacation in North Carolina for 2 whole weeks. Well, instead of going with him after school, I decided to go home, get an overnight bag like for part 2 about my shitty ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the original plan was for us to go together to his house after school. But I was like, I'm going to be spending the whole week over there. I should probably pack some clothes and get a shower. So after school, he drove me to my house. And he said that his parents wanted to have dinner together, so he had to go back to his house. And he would pick me up later. So when I got to my house, I got ready and everything, blah, blah, blah. And by this time, it was like 8 o'clock. So I kept texting and calling him, asking him where he's at, if he's coming to get me still. Then I realized that none of my text messages were going through. So then I go to text him on Snap. And what do you know? I couldn't find him on there. And then I call him off my mom's phone. He answers the phone and hangs up right away. Well, we were supposed to have a little party at his house too, that all of my friends were going to. So I texted every single one of them. None of them answered the phone. And I remembered that my one friend had shared her location with me before. So I went and looked at her location and where was she at? My boyfriend's house. So while I sat at home crying that whole week, he was throwing parties and cheating on me with my friends. And when we went back to school, he acted like we were never.
When I was in grad school, I worked as a tutor for undergrad students where I met my boyfriend who's 5 years younger than me. We had an amazing relationship. However, my parents are a little on the conservative side, and as soon as my mom learned about the age difference and his various tattoos, she was livid. They gave me an ultimatum. I would have to break up with my boyfriend or they would kick me out and stop paying for my education. My boyfriend told me it was okay and that my education was more important. He said we could always get back together after I had my degree, and despite hating it, I agreed with him. We broke up but kept in touch over the next year. He graduated and moved to a city a few hours away where my sister was going to school. 2 years after our breakup, my sister told me she'd been seeing someone for 7 months and sent me a picture. I could not believe my eyes. It was my ex-boyfriend. I texted him asking if it was true and I got no reply. I called my mother who told me it wasn't a big deal and that they're letting her have her rebellious phase. I avoided my family and threw myself into work thinking this would help me forget. I found out they got engaged through our mother and later received a wedding invitation. The wedding is less than a month away and I'm clearly not over him. I tear up at the thought of watching him say I do to my younger sister. I don't know what the right answer is. Do I smile and stick it out because it's my sister? Or prioritize my mental health?
This is why waking up late might just save your life. One day when I was in elementary school, my mom and I both overslept, which meant I wouldn't be ready in time to get on the bus. School started at 8, my bus pickup time was at 7, and it was already 6:40 or something. I was still in my PJs and hadn't even had breakfast yet. My mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. It's 6:50, I'm in my PJs eating breakfast, and that's when we hear the bus pull up 10 minutes earlier than scheduled. My mom peeks her head out of the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closed the door and came back inside, but the bus didn't pull away. There's a knock at the door and my mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explains he's a substitute bus driver because the regular driver called in sick and that he's early because he wanted to get an early start on the route. My mom says she's taking me to school because we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says he can wait a few minutes since he's already ahead of schedule. My mom says that we won't be ready in a few minutes and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed really angry about this, but turned around, got back on the bus and left. But at 7 a.m., another bus pulls up to my house. My mom went out to talk to them and came back looking terrified.
Have you let anyone borrow your phone before? One woman let her son borrow her phone, but she could have never expected the terrifying things she saw after she got her phone back. So this woman got her new phone and she put it on the kitchen counter and went to watch some TV. That's when her son came in and asked if he could borrow the phone to play with it. The woman didn't think much of it at first, so she agreed, but she could have never known that this would lead to a terrifying discovery. When it was nighttime, she got ready to tuck her son into bed, so she went upstairs to his room, but he wasn't there. Then she ran over to her room and saw him sleeping on her bed with the new phone in his hand. She felt relieved, so she took her phone back and started looking through it. At first, nothing was out of the ordinary. She saw her background had changed, but it wasn't until she saw the photos that she found the horrifying surprise. There were many new photos on her phone that her son took around the house, the front door, the kitchen, and even photos of her taken from the back when she was watching TV. She started deleting these photos until the last one caught her eye. Instantly, she turned around, terrified. It was a photo of her son sleeping in her bed, but it was taken by someone else, someone standing above him, and on the edge of the photo was half of a stranger's face.
Okay, nail tech, so I have a hypothetical situation for you guys to let me know what you think about it and what would you do in this situation. So let's say you worked very hard on this one set. It's glamorous, it's everything that they asked for, and you know it's cute and you're proud of your work with this specific set. But the client simply is just like, no, I don't like it, and they refuse to pay. What do you do? Or another situation where the client just simply, oh, I didn't bring enough money, or I'm not going to pay for everything that you did. What would you do? And this is the situation where you ask for the money after you do the work. You know, some shops do that, some don't. What would you do in that specific scenario? You guys can duet it, stitch it, leave it in the comments. You don't even have to be a nail tech, you could be a learner. I just want to know what you guys would do in this situation.
I'll never forget that time that I was fucking in middle school and I asked my art teacher if I could go to the nurse because my head hurt really bad. And he was like, no, you need to clean up because class is almost over. So I was like, okay. So I started cleaning, but like I started feeling like really bad. So I went up to him again and I was like, can I please like go to the nurse? Like I don't feel good. And he was like, it's almost lunchtime. You can wait. And I was like, okay. So I went back to my desk and all of a sudden I got dizzy as shit. The room started spinning. I felt like I was like about to die. Then my vision went blank, like completely black, but I could hear everything. And everyone was laughing at me. They're like, Zaria, what are you doing? Why do you look like that? And I tapped the girl next to me. I was like, can you walk me to the nurse? Like, I don't feel good. And she's like, you're joking. Like, you're not even being serious. And I was like, okay, I'll walk myself. So I started walking and I ran into a glass door and I fell backwards, hit my head, and then I went to the hospital.
Remember this client who got screwed over by her ex? Well, she came back for an appointment with more stories. After getting somewhat back on her feet, she decided to take a much-needed getaway to visit her best friend up in New York City. She thought she could turn to her friend for guidance and support, but she was wrong. After moving to New York City, her friend changed. She became mentally and emotionally abusive both to herself and others. My client had a rude awakening when she was left outside in a city she didn't know, while her so-called best friend got high on horse tranquilizers with a complete stranger. After all of that, my client stuck around to see if she was okay, just to find her strutting down her rooftop ledge, threatening her life. She was ready to end the friendship, but realized her friend needed more help and support than she ever did.
My fiance's girl best friend has never liked me. We were all hanging out when Madison and Michael came out from a room with Madison crying. Michael looks at me and starts swearing and says I'm a raging bitch. Being hormonal and pregnant, I start crying and asking what's wrong. He proceeds to tell me about the text message I sent Madison. I told her I would not allow her near our child. I only sent this text message after the many racist texts she sent me about my child and I, me being biracial and all. Instead of hearing me out, Michael kicked me out of the house that we shared. On my way out, I felt a lower cramp in my abdomen, and I thought nothing of this because I was not due for another 3 weeks. When I flinched from the pain, Michael told me to stop faking. On my way to my mom's, I felt a gush of water and immediately turned the car around so that I would make it to the hospital. I tried calling Michael numerous times, but my call was quickly declined. I gave birth to our baby all by myself. I decided to do something and post all the hurtful messages Madison sent me on Facebook. Michael calls me and I inform him about my whereabouts and he shows up 42 minutes later. He had tried to apologize multiple times, but I don't think I can forgive him. I went through the pain of pushing out an 8-pound baby all by myself because he chose to listen to his best friend over his fiancé. Should I forgive him?
Can you solve this mystery? This is a story about a young girl whose brother confessed to killing their parents, but things are not as they seem. All the clues to what really happened are hidden in what I'm about to say. So one day this young girl decided to tell her friend about the terrible tragedy. Her friend asked about what happened to her brother after the confession. She said he got arrested, went to trial, and eventually was found guilty and sentenced to death by lethal injection. During the execution, her brother never said a word. He gave no explanation and just stared at her blankly as they gave him the injection. The young girl admitted after that she couldn't eat or sleep. She had so many questions, but no one left to give her answers. She tried to block out the terrible memories and suffered from depression and even amnesia. The friend suggested she go to a psychic to find some answers, so she did. She asked, what drove my brother to lose his mind? And the psychic said, your brother was always perfectly sane. The girl asked, so then why did my brother kill our parents? And the psychic said, your brother was only responsible for the death of one person. Suddenly, the girl understood everything. She broke down crying. What really happened to this family? Can you solve this mystery?
I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister, and her name's Ashley. And we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, you need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night. And I look at him and I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like, I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night. Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, no. He's like, no, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her. So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, we don't go into each other's rooms, do we? And we agreed that we do not. And they said this has been going on for months. So for months, somebody or something has been going into me and my sister's room for about 15 minutes every night and watching us sleep. But it only gets worse.
Number 3, about the worst night of my life. So before she points the knife at me, she had been in the kitchen, right? So I went to go and sneak out the door. That's whenever she ran over, ripped the knife out of the door, and pointed it right at me. And she's like screaming a bunch of shit at me. And she's like, oh, what, are you gonna tell your dad that I pointed a knife at you? And I told her, yeah, like, what the fuck do you mean? Am I not gonna tell him? So at this point, she tries to take my phone. And I told her, no, you're not taking my phone. And at this time, my sister's also texting me and yelling at me because she had told me that I should not go to my mom's house. Probably for that exact reason. A few minutes later, she hears her boyfriend pull up. I had never met her boyfriend like this.
Hope you guys liked this video and found it helpful. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. It does help support us, and let's know what videos you guys want to see.